Big things are happening in the Gears of War speedrun community. As of a few months ago, we've discovered a couple huge new skips which make my near-perfect world record run completely obsolete. Not only that, but we've also got a bit of new tech across Gears 1, Ultimate Edition, and surprisingly, Gears 3. And we're going to talk about all of that in today's video. Our headline story starts back in early January. I had just returned from my Christmas vacation and found that Lemon from the backlogs had sent me a curious little DM. He was working on a challenge to complete Gears 1 with only melees and explosives, but had gotten hard stuck on the Corpser toward the end of Act 3. He claimed that this boss couldn't be beaten under these restrictions and was reaching out for help. First of all, I was in complete disbelief. You're telling me the Corpser is immune to boom shots and frags? But through some offline testing, I confirmed that this was actually the case. Yo, he doesn't give a shit! Anyway, the rest of Lemon's message basically boils down to a fascinating question. Are there any speedrunner tricks to skip the Corpser fight? My immediate reaction was no, probably not. Maybe you could do something with online co-op and have player 2 kung fu flip out of bounds, but that's not really possible for a single player run. The skips that we have existed since the early days of the game's speedrun route. Surely our predecessors spent a longer time than me jumping into walls and off the map, right? Well, let's just take a look to be sure. Darkest Before Dawn is the chapter in Act 3 that comes right before the Corpser. The map is structured kinda like a metal spring. You start at the top, and as you make your way through the level, you curve deeper and deeper into the coils until they finally unwind into a straighter path that leads to the actual Corpser fight. The typical Act 3 skip we know and love bypasses a couple layers on the spring by dropping us down directly through an unloaded map. Because the Corpser lies a bit after the spring, it seems impossible that we'd be able to skip it simply by dropping straight down. We would need a lot more horizontal movement if we wanted to stand a chance, and that's not something that comes easily in these games. The gravity is just too strong. Still, as skeptical as I was, I spent a couple days both on and off stream experimenting with the regular Act 3 skip, dropping down in different places, trying different timings. I also took a look at the route that's used on Insane difficulty that goes layer by layer to avoid fall damage, but that didn't really go anywhere useful either. The best I could come up with was using the regular out of bounds to drop down on top of a bunch of emulsion near the forked path halfway down the spiral. From here, I was surprised to learn that we can actually see the Corpser jump scare that's placed right before the boss area. Unfortunately, there's no other path to get further over there without falling through the map into the abyss. At this point, I basically just threw it over the fence to the Gears Speedrunner Discord and forgot about it while I did other things. Fast forward to about a week later, a member of the community posted a message that had me and everyone else on edge. What did they mean? Was it a new skip? Well, a few hours later, they posted a fascinating little video. It of course starts off in Darkest Before Dawn, just like our earlier experimentation. Instead of going to the far end of the cave for the initial out of bounds, they use a semi-precise cover slide to boost up on top of the terrain and get out of bounds a little earlier. The video continues with an alternate way of getting to the spiral drop point, which trims off about 15 seconds from the normal skip method, but then they did something that I found actually ridiculous. When they started dropping down through the spiral, they began to roll forward. I thought to myself, what is this dude doing? They're just gonna fall out from the spiral and die. But after a little over a minute of falling and rolling repeatedly, something new happened. They hit a load trigger and got the title text for the chapter that comes after the Corpser. After a few short moments, the terrain loaded in, revealing that they were stuck in the ground. But when they reloaded the checkpoint, they turned around to show that the Corpser had been skipped. It wasn't perfect though. When I got on to practice this new discovery, I found it incredibly difficult to match the lineup and hit the load trigger while falling. If I was off by even an inch, and I don't even know in which direction the inch was, instead of hitting the load trigger and teleporting back up to the level, I would just hit a kill barrier and immediately die. Still, this was a huge find. It just needed some iteration before making it reliable enough to actually use. Thankfully, we didn't have to wait too long, because just a few weeks later, the same person posted a new method. This time, instead of using the cover slide out of bounds that we just saw, they run down to the typical spot that we already use for the current Act 3 skip. But rather than going forward and continuing that skip, they turn around and navigate over the terrain for a bit. When they get to a certain point, they line up with a couple distinctive rock textures and then jump off the map. Just like before, it's a long fall, but after a while, once again, they hit the load trigger and successfully skip the Corpser. And the best part is, it's a real lineup. I definitely haven't mastered it yet, but even with a little bit of practice, I'm hitting it around 30-40% of the time. And I've heard from the other runners that can definitely get better with more training, and I believe it. Overall, this new Corpser skip saves about 2 minutes from the previous strats, and it doesn't rely on things that aren't melees or explosives, which also makes Lemon's challenge that much more possible. Actually, one problem. Lemon was apparently doing the challenge on Ultimate Edition, not Gears 1. And as you can probably guess, this doesn't work on UE. Oh well, maybe when the next new skip gets found. Speaking of, check this shit out. Not even a week later, the same community member posts yet another new video. This time, they're in early Act 1, right before crossing the bridge where you hear Kim say he's got the codes for the first time. Normally, we'd pass through the building on the other side, which contains a couple locust drones and a couple E-holes which we would quickly blast shut before running down a flight of stairs to a road guarded by a locust troika. Instead of crossing the bridge, our star gamer of the day puts their back up on the wall and starts spamming the camera focus button on their teammates. They pop up on top of the ledge, walk over a few steps to the corner of the bridge, and then nudge off the whole thing to drop all the way down. They then just run forward a little bit and hit the checkpoint trigger right before the troika defense, at which point the camera freaks out and gets stuck. It wasn't pictured in the video, but all you have to do after this is actually just reload the checkpoint and you're good to continue on. And continuing on from there, the video actually goes on to show basically the same thing in Ultimate Edition. In this version, there are even additional drop-down points which make it ever so slightly faster too. And much to my surprise, this one doesn't even need that much practice, because like I soon found out, it just works! It's free! I cannot stress how huge these discoveries are for the Gears speedrunning scene. Both of the skips we just saw were found by the same homie that found the massive Ilima skip in Gears 2. Seriously dude, if you ever feel like not being anonymous anymore, I'll plaster your profile all over these videos. Just say the word. This next tech is something that was posted in the Gears Runner Discord back in 2023, but I'd somehow forgotten to include it in last year's Gears 1 glitch video and only recently remembered about it again. Throughout the course of the Gears 1 campaign, there's several sections where you're forced to walk slowly with your finger in your ear while listening to some radio dialogues. In most of these places, we try to dodge roll right before to get a little bit of extra speed, but in some of these cases, there's actually something better we can do. Before the walk and talk sequence kicks in, we can start swapping our weapons back and forth to delay the finger and ear animation which locks us down. With this, we can move at our faster jog speed, so long as we manage the awkward controller grip that's needed and don't drop any swap inputs. This by itself saves 45-ish seconds over the course of the game, and we can even kick down a few doors while doing it to maximize time save. The timing window for that though is much tighter. Because the inputs are so similar to that old pattern matching toy some of us had while growing up, I found it only fitting to call this tech Simon Says. And once again, yeah, this one works on Ultimate Edition as well. Go figure. This discovery is definitely an example of something that was hiding right under our noses for a long time. I think I and many others intuitively knew about this sort of thing because after crossing the river in Act 2, it was already common to attempt some action queuing with a little cover movement to make our way up the stairs as far as we could before getting put into the slow walk. But I guess we never put two and two together that weapon swaps would also do the same thing. That just goes to show you what new perspective can do. At the beginning of the video, I promised a little something about Gears 3, so here we go. The Retro Lancer is the predecessor to the modern-day Lancer Mark II. Instead of a chainsaw bayonet, it features a regular bladed bayonet which lets you do a lethal retro charge into unsuspecting enemies. Because of some quirks with the startup animation, we can do a couple of interesting things. In the early game and in a few places later, there are these long ladders which take several seconds to climb up or down. If we input the retro charge and then quickly go up the ladder, we can cancel the retro charge by letting go of its button and teleport to the top of the ladder. Now, it's not like this leads to minutes full of time save, but it's really nice to finally have something cool in this game, besides a certain memorable cutscene. The other cool thing the retro charge lets us do is a cover jump. Similar to the Kung Fu Flip from online Gears 1, this tech sends the player flying into the air with some pretty decent height and gives us potential to get out of bounds. In theory, this should work everywhere in the game that gives you a retro lancer and a straight piece of cover, but because of the way Gears 3 checkpoints work, it doesn't seem like we'll be able to hit any massive skips off this technique. However, honestly, I didn't think something like this would ever be brought to my attention, so as of right now, I'm slightly more optimistic for the future. We'll just have to wait and find out. Alright homies, that's all we've got for today. I'm busy slamming my head against a certain other challenge right now, so if you want to see that, come by the stream. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next one. I was just trying to record some B-roll and Dom's going ham, bro.